Hello everybody and welcome back to my continuation of my book reading of Stephen King's Later. Hope you're doing fine and welcome back. Here we go. The super took a picture of the wires, the scrap of paper, and the blasting cap with his phone. But the task force didn't get it until the next day. Yesterday, I said. Right. As soon as we saw it, we knew we had our guy. Sure, because of the blasting cap. Yeah, but not just that. The scrap of paper? Canico is a Canadian company that manufactures dynamite. We got a list of the building's tenants and eliminated most of them without any fieldwork. Because we knew we were looking for a male, probably single, and probably white. There were only 6 tenants who checked out all those boxes, and only one guy who ever worked in Canada. You Googled him, right? I was getting interested. Right you are. Among other things, we found Kenneth Theriault had dual citizenship, US and Canada. He worked all sorts of construction jobs up there in the Great White North, plus fracking and oil shale sites. He was Stumper, pretty much had to be. I only got a quick look at Alexander Hamilton, just enough to read the sign and note his fancy pants. Liz had me by the hand and was leading me towards a path a little way beyond the statue. Pulling me, actually. We went in with the SWAT team, but his crib was empty. Well, not empty. All his stuff was there, but he was gone. The super didn't keep his big discovery to himself, unfortunately, although he was told to. He blabbed to some of the residents and the word spread. One of the things we found in the apartment was an IBM Selectric. That's a typewriter. She nodded. Those babies used to come with different type elements for different fonts. The one in the machine matched Stumper's notes. Before we get to the pad and the bench that wasn't there, I need to tell you some other stuff I found out later. She was telling the truth about how Theriault finally tripped over his dick. But she kept talking about we this, we that, but Liz wasn't a part of the Stumper task force. She had been part of the second task force, the one that ended in the big department shakeup when everybody was running around like chickens with their heads cut off. But by 2013, all Liz Dutton had left in the NYPD was a toehold. And only that much because cops had a kick-ass union. The rest of her was already out the door. Internal affairs was circling like buzzards around fresh roadkill, and on the day she picked me up from school, she wouldn't have been put on a task force dedicated to catching serial litter bugs. She needed a miracle, and I was supposed to be it. By today, she went on, every cop in the boroughs had Kenneth Theriault's name and description. Every way out of the city was being monitored by human eyeballs as well as cameras. As I'm sure you know, there's plenty of cameras. Nailing this guy dead or alive became our number one priority, because we were afraid he might decide to go out in a blaze of glory. Maybe setting off a bomb in the front of the Saks Fifth Avenue or in Grand Central. Only he did us a favor. He stopped and pointed at the spot beside the path. I noticed the grass was beaten down, as if a lot of people had been standing there. He came into the park, he sat down on a bench, and he blew his hair out with a Ruger .45 ACP. I looked at the spot. I was struck. The bench is at the NYPD forensics lab in Jamaica, but this is where he did it. So here's the big question. Do you see him? Is he here? I looked around. I had no clue what Kenneth Alan Theriot looked like. But if he had blown his brains out, I didn't think I could miss him. I saw some kids throwing a frisbee for the dog to chase. The dog was off his leash at Central Park, no. I saw a couple of lady runners, a couple of boarders, and a couple of old guy further down of the path reading newspapers. But I didn't see any guy with a hole in his head, and I told her that. Fuck, Liz said. Well, alright, we got 2 more chances, at least that I can see. He worked as an orderly at City of Angels Hospital at the 7th. Quite a calm down from his construction days, but he was in his 70s, and the apartment building where he lived is in Queens. Which do you think, champ? I think I want to go home. He might be any place. Really? Didn't you see they hang around places where they spend time when they were alive? Before they, I don't know, pop off for good? I couldn't remember if I said that to her exactly, but it was true. Still, I was feeling more and more like Ramona Scheinberg kidnapped, in other words. Why bother? He's dead, right? Case closed. Not quite. She bent down to look at me in the eye. She didn't have to bend so far in 2013 because I was getting taller. Nowhere near the 6 feet I am now, but a couple of inches. There was a note pinned to his shirt. It said, "There's no more," and it is a big one. "Fuck you and see you all in hell." It was signed Thumper. Well, that kind of changed things. We went to City of Angels first, because it was closer. There was no guy with a hole in his head out front. Just some smokers. So we went in through the emergency room entrance. A lot of people were sitting around in there, and one guy was bleeding from the head. The wound looked like a laceration to me rather than a bullet hole, and he was younger than Liz, said Kenneth Theriot was. But I asked Liz if she could see him, just to be sure. She said she could. We went to the desk where Liz showed her badge and identified herself as an NYPD detective. She asked if there was a room where the custodians put their stuff and changed their clothes for their shifts. The lady at the desk said there was, but the other police had already been there and cleaned out Theriot's locker. Liz asked if they were still there, and the lady said no. The last of them left hours ago. "I'd like to grab a quick peek anyway," Liz said. "Tell me how to get there." The lady said to take the elevator down to B level and turn right. Then she smiled at me and said, "Are you helping your mom in the investigations today, young man?" I thought of saying, "Well, she's not my mom, but I guess I am helping because she hopes that if Mr. Theriot is still hanging around, I'll see him." Of course, that wouldn't fly, so I was stuck. Liz wasn't. She explained that the school nurse thought I might have mono. So this seemed like a chance to get me checked out and visit Theriot's place of work at the same time. 2 birds with 1 stone type of deal. "You'd probably do better with your own doctor," the desk lady said. "This place is a madhouse today. You'll wait for hours." "That's probably best," Liz agreed. I thought how natural she sounded, and what a smooth liar she was. I couldn't decide if I was grossed out or admired. I guess a little both. The desk lady leaned forward. I was fascinated by how her extremely large besam's showed her papers forward. It made me think of an icebreaker boat I've seen in a movie. She lowered her voice. Everyone was shocked. Let me tell you, Ken was the oldest of all the orderlies, and the nicest, hardworking, and willing to please. If someone asked him to do something, he was always happy to do it. I with a smile. To think we were working with a killer. Do you know what it proves? Liz shook her head, clearly impatient for us to be on our way. That you never know, the desk lady said. She spoke like someone who's imparting a great truth. You just never know. He was good at covering up, alright, Liz said, and I thought, it takes one to know one. In the elevator I asked if you're on a task force. How come you're not with the task force? Don't be dumb, champ. Was I supposed to take you to the task force? Having to make up a story about you at the desk was bad enough? The elevator stopped. If anyone asks about you, remember why you're here. Mono. Right. But there was no one to speak. The custodian's room was empty. It had yellow tape saying police investigation, keep out across the door. Liz and I ducked under it, her holding my hand. There were benches, a few chairs, and about 24 lockers. Also a fridge, a microwave, and a toaster oven. There was an open box of Pop-Tarts by the toaster oven, and I thought I wouldn't have minded a Pop-Tart just then, but there was no Kenneth Theriault. The lockers had names stuck to them in Dymo tape. Liz opened Theriault's using a handkerchief because of the leftover fingerprints powder. She did it slowly, like she expected him to be hiding inside like a boogeyman in a kid's closet. Theriault was a sort of boogeyman, but he wasn't in there. It was empty. The cops took everything. Liz said fuck again. I looked at my phone to check the time. It was 3:20. I know, she said. Her shoulders were shrugged, and although I resented the way she just scooped me up and taken me away, I couldn't help feeling a little sorry for her. I remember Mr. Thomas saying my mom looked older, and now I thought my mom's lost friend looked older, too. Thinner. And I had to admit, I also felt some admiration. Because she was trying to do the right thing and save lives. She was like the hero of a movie, the lone wolf who means to solve the case on her own. Maybe she did care about innocent people who might be vaporized in Thumper's last bomb. Probably she did, but I know now she was also concerned with saving her job. I don't like to think it was her major concern, but in light of what happened later, I'll get to it. I have to think it was. Okay, one more shot, and stop looking at your dumb phone, champ. I know what time it is, and no matter how much trouble you're in, if I don't get you home before Mother shows up, I'll be in more. She'll probably take Barbara out for a drink before she goes home anyway. Barbara works for the agency now. I don't know why I said that exactly, because I also wanted to save innocent lives, I suppose, although that seemed rather academic to me, because I didn't think we were going to find Kenneth Theriault. I think it was because Liz looked so beaten down, so backed into a corner. Well, that's a lucky break, Liz said. All we need is one more. The Frederick Arms was 12 and 14 stories high, grey brick with bars on the windows on the first and second floor apartments. To a kid who grew up in the Palace on Park, it looked more like Shawshank Redemption prison than apartment building, and Liz knew right away that we were never going to get inside, let alone to Kenneth Theriault's apartment. The place was swarming with cops. Looky-loos were standing in the middle of the street, all close to the police sawhorse barricades as they could get snapping photos. TV news vans were parked on both sides of the block with their antennas up and the cables snaking everywhere. There was even a Channel 4 helicopter hovering around overhead. Look, I said, Stacey Ann Conway. She's on NY1. Ask me if I give a shit, Liz said. I didn't. We had been lucky not to run into reporters at Central Park or City of Angels, and I realized the only reason we hadn't was because they were all here. I looked at Liz and saw a tear trickling down one of her cheeks. Maybe we can go to his funeral, I said. Maybe he'll be there. He'll probably be cremated, privately, at the city's expense. No relatives? He outlived them all. I'll take you home, champ. Sorry to drag you all this way. Oh, that's okay, I said. I patted her hand. I knew Mom wouldn't like me doing that, but Mom wasn't there. Liz pulled a U-turn and headed back towards the Queensborough Bridge, a block away from the Frederick Arms. I glanced at the little grocery on my side and said, "Oh my God, there he is!" She snapped a wide-eyed glance at me. Are you sure? Are you sure, Jamie?" I leaned forward and vomited between my sneakers. That was all the answer she needed. I can't really see if he was as bad as the Central Park man. That was a long time ago. It could have been worse. Once you've seen what could happen to a human body that suffered an act of violence, and accident, suicide, murder, maybe it doesn't even matter. Kenneth Theriault, alias Thumper, was bad, okay? Really bad. There were benches on either side of the grocery store, so people could eat the snacks they bought, I suppose. Theriault was sitting on one of them with his hands on the ties of his khaki pants. People were passing by, heading for whatever they headed for. A black kid with a skateboard under his arm went into the store. A lady came out with a steaming paper cup of coffee. Neither of them glanced at the bench where Theriault was sitting. He must have been right-handed because that side of his head didn't look too bad. There was a hole in his temple, maybe the size of a dime, maybe a little smaller, surrounded by a dark corona that was either bruising or gunpowder. Probably gunpowder. I doubt if his body had time to muster enough blood to make a bruise. The real damage was on the left, where the bullet exited. The hole on that side was almost as big as a desert plate and surrounded by irregular fangs of bone. The flesh on his head was swelled, like from a gigantic infection. His left eye had been yanked sideways and bulged from its socket. Worst of all, grease stuff had dripped down his cheek. That was his brain. "Don't stop," I said. "Just keep going." The smell of puke was strong in my nose, and the taste of it was in my mouth, all slimy. "Please, Liz, I can't." She swerved to the curb in front of the fire hydrant near the end of the block. Indeed, you had to. You have to. And I have to. Sorry, champ, but we have to know. Now pull yourself together so people don't stare at us and think I've been abusing you. But you are, I thought. And you won't stop until you get what you want. The taste in my mouth was the ravioli I'd eaten in the school caf. As soon as I realized that I opened the door, leaned out, and puked some more. Like on the day of the Central Park man, where I never made it to Lily's birthday party at fancy Smancy Wave Hill. That was deja vu I could have done without. "Champ? Champ!" I turned to her and she was holding out a wad of Kleenex. "Show me a woman without Kleenex in her purse and I'll show you one. No one at all. Wipe your mouth and then go out of the car. Try to look normal. Let's get this done." I could see she meant it. We weren't going to leave until she had what she wanted. Man up, I thought. I can do this. I have to, because lives are at stake. I wiped my mouth and got out. Liz put a little sign on the dashboard, the police version of "Get out of jail free," and came around to where I was standing on the sidewalk, staring into a laundromat at a woman folding clothes. That wasn't very interesting, but at least it kept me from looking at the ruined man up the street. For the time being anyway. Soon I have to. Worse, oh God, I have to talk to him. Even if he could talk. No wait, I said this wrong. I have to talk to him. If he even could talk. I held up my hand without thinking. 13 was probably too old to be holding hands with a woman the people passing by would assume was my mother, if they bothered thinking about us at all. But when she took it, I was glad. Glad as hell. We started back to the store. I wish we've had miles to walk. but it was only half a block. "Where is he exactly?" she asked me in a low voice. I risked a look to make sure she hadn't moved. Nope, he was still on the bench, and now I could look directly into the crater where he had once been taught. His ear was still on, and it was crooked, and I found myself remembering a Mr. Potato Head I've had when I was 4 or 5. My stomach clenched again. "Get it together, champ. Don't call me that anymore." I managed to say I hate it. Duly noted. "Where is he?" "Sitting on the bench." "The one on this side of the door or this side?" "Yeah." I was looking at him again. We were close now, so I couldn't help it. And I saw an interesting thing. A man came out of the store with newspaper under his arm and a hot dog in one hand. The hot dog was in one of those foil bags that's supposed to keep them hot. Believe that and you'll believe the moon is made out of green cheese. He started to sit down on the other bench, already pulling his hot dog out of the bag. Then he stopped, looked either at me and Liz or the other bench, and walked on down the block to eat his pop somewhere else. He didn't see Theriot. He would have run if he had, most likely screaming his head off, but I think he felt him. No, I don't just think it, I know it. I wish I paid more attention at the time, but I was upset. As I'm sure you understand. If you don't, you're an idiot. Theriot turned his head. It was a relief because the move hit the worst of the exit wound. It wasn't relief because his face was normal on one side and all bloated out of shape on the other, like that guy Two-Faced in Batman comics. Worst of all, now he was looking at me. I see them and they know I do. It's always been like that. Always been that way. "Ask him where the bomb is," Liz said. She was speaking from the corner of her mouth like a spy in a comedy. A woman with a baby and a papoose carrier came up to the sidewalk. She gave me a disrespectful glance. Maybe because I looked funny or maybe because I smelled of puke. Maybe both. I was past the point of caring. All I wanted was to do what Liz Dutton has brought me here to do. Then get the fuck out. I waited until the woman with the baby went out inside. "Where's the bomb, Mr. Theriot? The last bomb?" At first he didn't reply, and I was thinking, okay, his brains are blown out. He's here, but he can't talk, end of story. Then he spoke up. The words didn't exactly match the movement of his mouth, and it came to me that he was talking from somewhere else. Like on a time delay from hell. That scared the shit out of me. If I had known that was when something awful came into him and took him over, I would have been even worse. It would have been even worse. But do I know that? Like for sure? No, but I almost know it. I don't want to tell you. And with this one, I'm gonna stop it here for this book reading. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care. Bye bye.